The key thing to remember with the golf course is that it's a green open space. There's very little built area within the golf course itself. And I would like you to think of it more like a good park, not a Hong Kong urban park, but a nice traditional old park, maybe in the US or the UK. So it's already a green open space that's been managed partly for its landscape value, because it has a certain structure that has to be maintained. So the short grass where the golf is played and the wooded areas. It's quite old as a habitat. I mean, the oldest part of the golf course is well over 100 years old. The first thing we did was a comprehensive biodiversity inventory. And that was part of the Audubon accreditation process, which you've got down here. And that really looked at the biodiversity value of the golf course. And that showed it to be remarkably high for a lot of species groups. And it's not that surprising, because obviously we're in the tropics, which is very biodiversity rich, but also it's basically one of the biggest green lowland open spaces left in Hong Kong. It's got lots of old trees, so it's very good for moths, bats, birds, nocturnal mammals. So it's got quite a lot of the larger mammals that you get in Hong Kong. And that's partly because as a golf course, there's no one there at night. So at night, it's very, very undisturbed. So it already had, surprisingly, for a golf course, a very high biodiversity value. It's probably the most biodiversity rich golf course anywhere in the world. So what we then did was we identified, the key ecological, sensitivities that they had to, in some cases, modify their management, so they weren't doing any harm or allowing things to thrive. But also we looked at key things like how much of the area do you need to cut in terms of the understory in the forest. We helped reprofile ponds to make them more suitable for wildlife. But also we did things like we helped design and build a butterfly garden. And that's again ecological enrichment, but also that was something that they wanted to do in terms of community outreach and nature education. It's actually a brilliant site to work on from an ecological perspective, because you've already got a land user who wants to maintain a green open space, but they were really completely ignorant of the ecological value of the site. And once they realized that there was some easy things that they could do to improve the ecological value of the site, they very, very quickly came on board. And then we started helping them with their outreach, their social media and stuff. And obviously the golf course is under a certain amount of threat because there's development proposals from the government. They have to compromise a little bit about some of their management measures. So, one of the things they had to do to get their Audubon accreditation was to stop cutting all of the vegetation all the way around all of the ponds, because obviously that diminishes its wildlife value. And they have to accept that some of the areas in the golf course are going to be a little less tidy now. So there's an area where we told them to stop cutting the grass because they were damaging the roots of some very, very old trees. And then we just fenced it off and let it become overgrown. And it gets cut once a year, but in a less aggressive way. But yeah, they just have to accept that some of it's not going to be micromanaged. It's not going to be like they have a very singular view of what a golf course looks like, and part of our job is to work with them and the members to make them understand why it's better if all of the golf course isn't manicured. I think the butterfly garden is the best example, or a really tangible example, because we took a small landscape garden that had tiny numbers of butterflies in it, and we completely redesigned it. We designed it from an ecological perspective, and as I said earlier, we came up with a list of I think it was 50 butterflies that should occur there, and then we looked at their larval food plants, they're nectar food plants, and then we did a colour palette looking at what colour plants we could get in and what time of year they would flower, and then we designed it with all of that in mind so that it looks good, but obviously maximises the ecological value. And now what they're saying is, so we're in the process of coming up with a 5-year conservation management plan for the entire golf course. And what they want to do is replicate this type of landscape planting across other parts of the landscape planting across the golf course, because they can see that it looks good, but also when you go there, when it's full of butterflies, everybody is just blown away because it's amazing. You go there sometimes and there's literally 500, 600, 700 butterflies in the area. Well, we did that, and then we worked with their landscaping team, and then they modified parts of our design, and there were some plants that they couldn't get, and we helped with all of the design of the interpretation boards. And we're happy to see these landscaped areas like being colourful and beautiful and and tidy. We just as ecologists get endlessly frustrated when the ecological potential is just not recognised. If we were to go to 100, it would look terrible most of the time and would look really overgrown, and most of the people who visited it would say, yeah, this is a mess. But if the landscape team had designed it, we'd probably be at about 20% of the potential, and it would look in some eyes a lot better. And also I see what one of our roles as ecologists is helping to educate people why you shouldn't micromanage these green open spaces and why they shouldn't be so manicured, and helping people get their head around why, if they're a little bit messier and a little bit wilder, they're a lot better.